What's good, YouTube? Welcome back to the Brown Gent. As you can see in the video right here, we're just enjoying the presence of the NIO vehicles, all sort of experiencing everything that it has to offer. Now, before we get into today's video, if you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button, like the video, and share the video. As you saw from the thumbnail, why is there so much going on with NIO? Why is the price coming down? Is this something that we're missing? Is there something we should be worried about? Because I thought electric vehicles were the future with Tesla out in America and NIO as well as Li Auto and others in China. So why don't we get into that right now? But first, as a quick recap, NIO as a stock over the last day, on Friday, it was down 2.6%. Over the week, it was down 15%. Over the month, it was actually up 19.89 or 20%. But that figure that you saw in the thumbnail relates to the last 6 or 7 days where we've seen the price of NIO to start to slide. So what exactly is going on? Well, one of the things you should always make sure you do is go to Yahoo Finance or go to TradingView, and you can check the news articles to find out exactly what some of the analysts are thinking, because a lot of retail traders sort of follow their influence. So if we look here on Market Watch, what we can see here is NIO is not alone. NIO is one of many Chinese stocks that's facing a sort of repression or regression toward its previous price action down because of the economic data that's coming out of China. And this has a lot to do with a lot of the complications. So if you're a new trader or you're a new investor, this is why I always recommend just focus on one market at a time. Imagine sort of having some stocks in China, in the US, in Asia, whatever, right? Like all over the multiple continents. What that means is now all of a sudden, you need to make sure you're on top of every single market. And that makes it incredibly hard because you can get some fantastic economic data in the US, but then you see some terrible export data in China. And for some reason, you're seeing the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ go up, but you're seeing your stocks in China come down. And that's exactly what happened with NIO, right? So NIO is coming down due to the Chinese export data that is below expectations for July. And also the overall passenger sales of cars has dropped in the month. So this is very important. And this is why we want to make sure we always check out all the articles. The US listed shares of Chinese companies were headed lower in Tuesday's price action as data showed exports falling sharply in July. And they sort of proxied that to say, hey, there might be a slowdown in global economic growth. Not just that, but because of this decline that's sort of proxying this global demand, the vehicle sales also within the country fell. Now, that is not related specifically to NIO, but just all retail sales of passenger cars, which dropped only 2%. Though retail sales of new energy cars, speaking electric vehicles and hybrids of sorts, were up nearly 32%. So the market is sort of being a little nonsensical, right? So one of the things that we have to be clear is there are a few stocks in China that truly control the price action for the majority of stocks. So just like for tech, when Tesla and Apple do fantastic, they have fantastic earnings, you see a lot of the stock market pull everything else up. Just like that, Alibaba is such a massive component of the Chinese market, and sort of seeing how that e-commerce platform, how they do in their earnings, will really give us some indication on how the market will go. And that was reported sort of on Thursday. So Li Auto, in fact, had declining market share or market valuation, even though they beat their financials for the previous quarter. So it makes no sense. And this is sort of why we have to focus on the fundamentals, right? So one of the things that we talk about a lot in this channel is the fear and greed index. I haven't brought it up in quite some time, but if you just take a look here, right now, we are in the portion of the market where people are greedy. When people are greedy, this is when we start to see tons of corrections. This is actually some of the worst time to buy. This is for the overall market, of course, and for your relevant stock, you can actually see how the stock is doing by checking out the chart, looking at where the stock's price stands, and looking at that in relation to the bottom or the top end of the Bollinger Bands. In this case, for NIO, it is sitting near the bottom range of the Bollinger Bands, which suggests that we might see an upwards movement to around $13.50. Not just that, but we also have the confluence here of the RSI. So the RSI is sitting currently around 35, and an RSI of 30 means that a stock is oversold. So then typically what will happen is the stock will go up, and then if it hits oversold territory, which is 70, then the stock price will come down. Obviously, it's not just one factor, it's many sort of things that happen all at once. So that is one of the biggest reasons why sort of NIO is going down, but it's actually going opposite of what the chart and what the fundamentals tell us. Not just that, but if you look at Deutsche Bank, they've raised their NIO price target by 70%, right? So they said, hey, forget $13, we're putting $17 a share, and we're putting a buy rating for NIO. And this actually happened, what was this? Just make sure I get the date right. Yeah, so this was actually yesterday, where the stock was on the move because they got this new price target. Of course, this was not sort of long-standing, as I showed you yesterday. The price of NIO actually, it actually ended up the market down 2.6%. But just taking a look at this, the stock technically could climb as high as about 30% over the next year compared to Friday's close. So very bullish. I'm super bullish on this company. Like, I don't buy a lot of Chinese stocks, as I've told you before, because I don't like the Chinese government's influence over that stock. And sort of we saw what happened with Chinese education stocks, where all of a sudden overnight the government sort of changed the regulation on it, and they went from hundreds of dollars a share to pennies on the dollar, right? So if you ask someone why they're so bullish on NIO, you said, and motivated by a greater sense of urgency, NIO's operational execution has improved significantly in the past quarter, with new models ramping quickly and sales efficiency improving. So this sort of great statement also ties with NIO's delivery. So this is something else that we want to make sure that we're constantly monitoring, right? Fantastic that NIO is sort of releasing, I think it's the ES6, but even beyond that, how are they doing? As they're sort of building cars, is the demand there, right? So they delivered a record 20,462 vehicles. The deliveries of the ES6 exceeded 10,000 in July 2023. And the ES6 is actually this vehicle that you see right here. Now, they also delivered a total of 20,462 vehicles in July, increasing 103% year over year. Remember, this company has come a long way since they were bailed out by the Chinese government, trading at like $2 a share back in 2020. They had a meteoric rise and sort of they became the darling of the investing world, or at least the YouTube investing world. And since then, we've seen a massive sell-off. And that's something I always remind all of you. If you've been watching this channel for a while, what you can see here actually is as we go back, and sort of this is like over the last few years, let's take a look over here. This peak corresponds to NIO Day back in 2021. And ever since this, it has really been on a slide downwards. You can see here, like I had exited my entire position when we broke the $38.51 mark. It was this back in December of 21. And I started buying back in around this range again here. So below $10, I started loading up. Not too many, of course, because once again, I always tell you, you want to be diversified. NIO is still a speculative company. I actually choose to invest in Tesla, which I think is the EV leader in the space. But NIO does have some incredible innovations like their battery as a service subscription model and sort of their vehicle offering, as well as the fact that the Chinese government will prevent them from failing. So that's a very important factor to keep in mind. Now, if you're wondering, hey, whether you have NIO or you don't, and you're wondering, hey, how can I play this properly going into next week? Well, one of the things you can do is I recommend, and remember, this is not financial advice, I'm not a financial advisor. Instead of going in to buy shares and dip buy the company for $12.90 a share, consider selling a put option. The one that I'm looking at right here is the $12.50 strike price. What that means is you're agreeing by selling this contract and getting $28, you're willing to lock up $1,250 just for 1 week, where they can execute that and you'll have to buy 100 shares at that price. So obviously if the share price doesn't go below it, like the share price has to go below $12.22 to sort of make you, I wouldn't say lose money, but for it to really not be worth it for you. But then again, if you were going to buy the shares anyways, this is just a way better deal because you sort of just get that money. You don't have to do anything. Maybe you have to pay a commission fee to your brokerage. That's why I always recommend that you sort of select brokerages that have the lowest fees. I know people use Robinhood or they use Webull if you're in the US. If you're in Canada, I recommend Interactive Brokers for the exact same reason, because I started using Questrade at first, and they charge you like $12 an option, and that's for each sort of way. So if I did this trade on Questrade, I'd be losing money. But for 1 week, just holding $12.50 aside, you get 2% on your money, and you don't get the shares, but maybe if the stock goes down, you get the shares, and guess what? You were gonna buy them anyways. So this is sort of what I would consider, and you can also see here, it's where the biggest open interest is at 7,000 people, or 7,000 sort of contracts being traded here. So that's very important. I hope you sort of see that there's a lot of positive things going for NIO. Yes, in the short term, there's the economic data that's bringing it down. But if you have a long-term approach and you sort of see what the company's doing, the deliveries are fantastic. I'm going to make sure that I continue building out a small position in this company. It's not going to be a big one because Tesla is my big bet here, but I think that this can go places. And that's pretty much all I want to talk about in this video. I want to thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.